Well, 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 look who finally dropped the mask. Look who finally stopped playing nice. Look who finally revealed the real version hiding beneath all that politeness. You, that beautiful, terrifying force of nature. They truly believed they had you figured out, didn't they? Filed under harmless, labeled as sweet, categorized as safe to push around. They treated you like furniture, like background noise, like someone who would always turn the other cheek. And for a while you let them think that. You smiled when they disrespected you, laughed when they made you the punchline, and stayed quiet when they stole credit for your work, your ideas, your energy. You played small so convincingly that they actually believed that's all you were. But then it happened. That one day, that one final act of disrespect that hit differently. Maybe it was the tone they used. Maybe it was the public humiliation. Or maybe it was just another Tuesday and you had finally had enough. In that split second, something ancient inside you stirred. Something powerful, silent, and done with pretending. You didn't yell. You didn't cry. You didn't throw a tantrum like they expected. No, you did something far more terrifying. You got quiet. You got still. And then you smiled. Not that customer service smile they were used to. The other smile. The one that made the room temperature drop 10 degrees. You remember their faces, don't you? That perfect moment when their minds short-circuited trying to process what just happened. 1 second, you were their favorite doormat. The next, you were radiating the kind of energy that makes grown adults step back without knowing why. You could see the confusion in their eyes, the panic, the recalculation, the dawning realization that they had been poking something they didn't understand. That maybe, just maybe, your kindness was never weakness and it was restraint. And they had just burned through your last reserves of giving a damn. You didn't need to say much. Sometimes silence does the talking. Sometimes the way you tilt your head, the calm in your eyes, the pause before your next breath, it all says more than words ever could. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying to make everyone comfortable and simply exist in your full, unfiltered truth. And when you did that, everything shifted. Suddenly, they were the ones stuttering, over-explaining, trying to lighten the tension with nervous laughter that never landed because you weren't playing along anymore. The script had changed, and they no longer had their lines. You started saying no without apology. You walked away mid-sentence the moment disrespect entered the room. You took up space like you were meant to be here because you are. And every time they tried to push you back into that small, safe box they built for you, you looked at them like they'd completely lost their minds. "You've changed," they said, trying to gaslight you like that was an insult. "You're not the same person anymore." And you smiled and said, "Thank you for noticing." Because yes, you had changed. You'd stopped pretending to be okay with their mistreatment. The panic in their eyes said it all. They realized their favorite punching bag had transformed into something untouchable. Every insult, every slight, every attempt to belittle you, all of it had been recorded, not in bitterness, but in awareness. Because while they thought you were weak, you were actually observing. While they underestimated you, you were collecting data. You weren't their victim. You were their lesson. Well, well, well. Look who finally dropped the mask. Look who finally stopped playing nice. Look who finally revealed the real version hiding beneath all that politeness. You, that beautiful, terrifying force of nature. They truly believed they had you figured out, didn't they? Filed under harmless, labeled as sweet, categorized as safe to push around. They treated you like furniture, like background noise, like someone who would always turn the other cheek. And for a while you let them think that. You smiled when they disrespected you, laughed when they made you the punchline, and stayed quiet when they stole credit for your work, your ideas, your energy. You played small so convincingly that they actually believed that's all you were. But then it happened. That one day, that one final act of disrespect that hit differently. Maybe it was the tone they used. Maybe it was the public humiliation. Or maybe it was just another Tuesday and you had finally had enough. In that split second, something ancient inside you stirred. Something powerful, silent, and done with pretending. You didn't yell, you didn't cry. You didn't throw a tantrum like they expected. No, you did something far more terrifying. You got quiet, you got still. And then you smiled. Not that customer service smile they were used to. The other smile, the one that made the room temperature drop 10 degrees. You remember their faces, don't you? That perfect moment when their minds short-circuited trying to process what just happened. 1 second you were their favorite doormat, the next you were radiating the kind of energy that makes grown adults step back without knowing why. You could see the confusion in their eyes, the panic, the recalculation, the dawning realization that they had been poking something they didn't understand. That maybe, just maybe, your kindness was never weakness, it was restraint. And they had just burned through your last reserves of giving a damn. You didn't need to say much. Sometimes silence does the talking. Sometimes the way you tilt your head, the calm in your eyes, the pause before your next breath, it all says more than words ever could. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop trying to make everyone comfortable and simply exist in your full, unfiltered truth. And when you did that, everything shifted. Suddenly, they were the ones stuttering, over-explaining, trying to lighten the tension with nervous laughter that never landed because you weren't playing along anymore. The script had changed, and they no longer had their lines. You started saying no without apology. You walked away mid-sentence the moment disrespect entered the room. You took up space like you were meant to be here. Because you are. And every time they tried to push you back into that small, safe box they built for you, you looked at them like they'd completely lost their minds. "You've changed," they said, trying to gaslight you like that was an insult. "You're not the same person anymore." And you smiled and said, "Thank you for noticing." Because yes, you had changed. You'd stopped pretending to be okay with their mistreatment. The panic in their eyes said it all. They realized their favorite punching bag had transformed into something untouchable. Every insult, every slight, every attempt to belittle you, all of it had been recorded, not in bitterness but in awareness. Because while they thought you were weak, you were actually observing. While they underestimated you, you were collecting data. You weren't their victim, you were their lesson. You were learning exactly who they were when they thought no one important was watching. Every time they showed their true colors, you took note. Not to hold it against them, but to finally understand who you were dealing with. And here's what really broke their minds. You didn't become cruel. You didn't stoop to their level. You didn't seek revenge, spread gossip, or try to destroy them. No, you did something far more devastating. You simply stopped protecting them from the natural consequences of their own actions. When they talked over you in meetings, you didn't fade into silence anymore. You kept speaking, louder, clearer, until they either had to shut up or expose their own foolishness. When they tried to unload their emotional garbage onto you, you handed it right back with calm precision. That sounds like a you problem. It became your favorite phrase. You stopped laughing at jokes made at your expense, stopped helping people who only remembered you when they needed something, stopped dimming your intelligence to soothe fragile egos, and stopped shrinking your presence to make small people feel big. And that's when it hit them. The horrifying truth. You had never been beneath them. You had been holding yourself back. You'd been fighting with both hands tied and still keeping up. So what happens when someone like that finally decides to fight at full capacity? When the person they underestimated stops underestimating themselves? They found out fast. Suddenly you were earning promotions they thought were guaranteed for them. You were setting boundaries they couldn't cross. You were commanding the kind of respect they used to beg for. Not because you became someone new, but because you finally became who you truly are. The meetings you once sat quietly through, now you led them with insight so sharp it left marks. The social situations where you used to fade into the background, now you were the gravitational center, and they were mere satellites orbiting your confidence, hoping for acknowledgement. The dreams you once whispered about, you were now living out loud, boldly, unapologetically. And the best part? You made it look effortless. Because it was effortless once you stopped carrying their baggage, once you stopped apologizing for existing at full volume, once you stopped making yourself smaller so others could feel taller. You realized you were never the problem. You were just surrounded by people who needed you to be less so they could pretend to be more. But once you've tasted your own power, there's no going back. You can't unsee your potential. You can't return to a world where you let disrespect slide, because now you know that respect isn't something earned through obedience. It's something commanded through presence. Now they treat you differently, don't they? Now they measure every word before they speak. They think twice before trying to push your buttons, not because you threatened them, but because you revealed the truth. You showed them who they were really dealing with, and that terrified them more than any threat ever could. Some tried to pull you back down, saying, "Remember when you used to be so nice?" hoping to guilt you back into submission. But you looked them dead in the eye and said, "I'm still nice to people who deserve it." Because the audacity of expecting kindness from someone you've consistently disrespected is the height of entitlement. Others tried to rewrite history, pretending they'd always believed in you. "We always knew you were destined for greatness," they'd say, and you'd just smile because receipts don't lie. You had years of evidence showing exactly how they treated you when they thought you didn't matter. But the ones who truly understood, they approached you differently now, with something new in their eyes. Respect, maybe even a little fear. Because they finally realized your gentleness was a choice, not a flaw. Your kindness was born of strength, not weakness. You were a dragon pretending to be a sheep, and they just witnessed the moment you stopped pretending. Now you move through the world differently, not with arrogance, but with awareness. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. You know exactly who you are, what you deserve, and what you will never accept again. And that energy, that unshakable, grounded, radiant energy, it's magnetic, it's intoxicating, and absolutely terrifying to those who once benefited from your self-doubt. You walk into a room and everything shifts. Conversations pause, energy rearranges, eyes turn. Not because you demand attention, but because authentic power can't be ignored. When you speak now, people listen, not because you're loud, but because you finally believe your voice matters. You set boundaries like you're constructing a fortress, and only the worthy are allowed beyond the gates. The same people who used to interrupt you now wait until you're finished. The ones who dismissed your ideas now take notes when you speak. The ones who said you were too much are realizing they were simply too little to handle someone who refuses to shrink. And the best part? You're not even trying to prove anything anymore. You're just being. That's the secret about remembering who you truly are. Once you step into your power, you no longer need to announce it, defend it, or fight for it. It radiates from you naturally like heat from a flame, and everyone around you either gets warmed by it or burned by it, depending on how they treated the fire. Make no mistake, this isn't a phase. This isn't you acting out or going through something. This is you, fully, unapologetically, permanently. This is what happens when someone stops asking permission to exist, when someone stops apologizing for taking up space, when you finally understand that playing small serves no one, and least of all yourself. You've crossed a threshold you can never uncross. You've opened a door that will never close. You've awakened something that refuses to go back to sleep. And thank everything sacred for that, because the world needs more souls like you. People who won't shrink, won't settle, won't tolerate being disrespected just to be accepted. The version of you that tolerated mockery is gone. The one that swallowed insults for peace has been buried. The one that made themselves small so others could feel tall, gone forever. What stands in their place is someone who knows their worth and won't negotiate it. Someone who'd rather walk alone than walk with people who don't respect them. Someone who understands that the right people will never ask you to be less than who you are, and the ones who thrived on disrespecting the old you. They're struggling now, aren't they? Testing the new boundaries, poking at the old buttons, waiting for the old you to reappear, the version that was convenient for them. But you're not going back. How could you? How does one unknow their own power? How do you unfeel your own truth? How do you return to crumbs after tasting the whole feast? You can't. And deep down, they know it. They're realizing this isn't temporary. This is permanent. This is who you've always been beneath their assumptions. Some are angry. How dare you change the rules without their consent? How dare you stop playing the role they assigned you? You were supposed to stay in the background, supporting their story, but now you've written your own. Bold, sovereign, and self-authored. The audacity, the betrayal of simply becoming yourself. Others, though, are quietly adjusting. They're recalibrating, realizing their old tactics no longer work. They're learning to speak to you with respect because disrespect gets them nowhere. They're learning to listen to you because ignoring you costs them. They're learning to see you, finally, as you truly are. And it's uncomfortable. But growth always is. Then there are those who can't handle it at all. They're drifting away, convinced their absence will humble you, break you, make you revert to your old convenient self. They don't realize they're doing you a favor. Every person who leaves because they can't handle your truth is creating room for someone who can. Every exit clears space for a better entrance. And here's the most beautiful part of all. You're not trying to intimidate anyone. You're just being real. You're not being difficult. You're simply having standards. You're not too much. You're just no longer willing to be less. And if that makes people uncomfortable, that's not your burden to carry. That's their healing to do. You've learned one of life's most powerful truths, the difference between being liked and being respected. For years, you tried to be liked. You tried to fit in, to be agreeable, to make everyone else comfortable, even when it meant silencing yourself. Being liked demanded flexibility, bending when you wanted to stand firm, laughing when something wasn't funny, pretending not to notice when people crossed boundaries. It required you to shrink, to dim your light, to be digestible for those who couldn't handle your full brilliance. But now you've discovered that being liked is an illusion, fragile, temporary, and conditional. Respect, however, respect is solid. It's built on truth, on self-awareness, on courage. Being respected requires something far deeper: unwavering boundaries, self-worth that doesn't waver under pressure, and the willingness to stand alone rather than kneel for approval. And while being liked once felt safe, being respected feels right. It feels powerful, authentic, and alive. It feels like stepping back into your own skin after years of exile. It feels like coming home to yourself. The ones who truly belong in your life recognize this version of you and celebrate it. They look at you with pride, not fear. They say, finally. They say, it's about time. They say, I've been waiting for you to see what I've always seen. Because the people who love you for real, friends, partners, family, mentors, they don't want a watered-down version of your soul. They don't want a polite echo of who you could be. They want the real you, the full, raw, unapologetic version that walks in purpose and power. Real ones don't fear your growth. They root for it. But then there are the others. The ones who thrived when you were uncertain, who built their fragile egos on your humility, the ones who felt tall only because you were kneeling. Their success was never about their greatness. It was about your self-suppression. Their victories were illusions built on your silence. They weren't better than you. They were just louder while you were quieter. They weren't more deserving. They just claimed space you hadn't yet realized was yours. They weren't stronger. They just counted on you to doubt your own power. But not anymore. Because now you've remembered something ancient, something unshakable. You never needed permission. You never needed approval. You never needed validation from those who couldn't recognize gold if it glimmered right in front of them. You've remembered that the crown has always been yours. It was simply waiting for you to stop letting others convince you it was too heavy for your head. Now they watch you differently. They watch with awe, confusion, and a quiet fear they'll never admit out loud. They see you walking with purpose, like you own the very ground beneath your feet. Because you do. They hear you speak with conviction, every word landing with weight, because now you know your voice matters. They see you standing in your truth, taking up space as if you were born to, because you were. The same people who once mocked your confidence now whisper about it. The same ones who dismissed you now take notes. You've become a walking revelation to them, a living contradiction to the version of you they built in their heads. You went from adorable to unshakable in the blink of an eye, from harmless to untouchable, from predictable to uncontainable, from someone they could manipulate to someone they can't even reach. The transformation was so complete, so sudden, they're still dizzy trying to process it. But you're not dizzy. You're focused. You're clear. Clearer than you've ever been in your entire life. You finally know who you are, what you deserve, and what you will never tolerate again. You understand that kindness without boundaries isn't kindness. It's self-destruction. That being nice without being respected is just another form of being used. That constantly making yourself smaller doesn't make others more comfortable. It only feeds their delusion of superiority. You've learned that your light was never meant to make others blind. It was meant to help them see. So here's to you. To the moment you remembered exactly who the hell you are. Here's to the moment you stopped asking for permission to exist fully, loudly, and proudly. Here's to the exact second you realize that anyone who needs you to be less to feel comfortable is not someone meant to walk beside you. Here's to the transformation, that bold, beautiful, terrifying evolution from doormat to force of nature. Because the truth is, they were only winning while you were sleeping. They only had power while you were doubting, but you've awakened now and you can't unsee your potential. You can't unfeel your strength. You can't unknow your divinity. The old version of you, the one who played small, who apologized for existing, who mistook tolerance for peace, is gone forever. What remains is a masterpiece in motion. A human being who finally understands that worthiness isn't something to earn. It's something you embody. A soul who knows that respect isn't requested. It's commanded through presence. And now that you've tasted freedom, you'll never again settle for crumbs when you were born to sit at the throne. They were ahead while you were holding yourself back, playing cautiously, trying to do things the right way. They seemed on top only because you were still playing by rules they never believed in, never followed, and never intended to. They bent the system while you honored it. They cheated time while you spent yours perfecting your craft. They manipulated perception while you trusted truth. They laughed while you carried the weight of integrity. But then, something shifted deep inside you. Something ancient, fierce, and undeniable finally woke up. You looked around and realized the whole game had been rigged from the start, built to make you doubt yourself just enough to stay in second place. And in that realization, the illusion shattered. You stopped trying to catch up. You stopped trying to prove yourself. You stopped running the race they designed because you finally remembered. You were never meant to compete in their arena. You were meant to create your own. That was the moment everything changed. Because once you woke up, once you remembered who you are, the entire structure that held you down started to tremble. You decided enough was enough. You reclaimed your energy. your time, your focus, and your voice. And suddenly, the same people who used to seem ahead were stumbling, confused, watching you build something they can't even comprehend. You weren't playing to win anymore, you were playing by your own rules. And the crown they said was too big for you? It fits perfectly now. It always did. You just had to stop letting their small minds convince you otherwise. You realize that power isn't given, it's claimed. And once it's claimed, once you truly anchor it within yourself, it becomes untouchable. It doesn't depend on permission, approval, or applause. It's self-sustaining, sovereign, eternal. Now the same people who used to mock you can't stop staring. The ones who dismissed you whisper about you. The ones who ignored you are suddenly alert. They can feel the shift even before you speak, because energy doesn't lie. You became undeniable and that terrifies them, so let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them gossip in their little corners, trying to dissect what changed. You don't owe them a press release or an explanation. You don't owe them softness or a gradual re-entry into your new self. You don't owe them anything. If your truth burns their eyes, they can look away. You spent too long dimming your light just to make others comfortable. Now you're done. You're done playing small so they can feel tall. You're done being humble to soothe fragile egos. You're done apologizing for existing in full power. And the beauty is, they know it. They can feel it. That realization haunts them more than your silence ever did, because power, once recognized, cannot be forgotten. And now they've seen it in you. That's what terrifies them. Not your words, not your success, but your awareness. You've stepped into an identity they can no longer control. And here's the magic. Your awakening is contagious. When one person remembers their worth, it gives others permission to do the same. The people who were once shrinking beside you are now watching with hungry eyes, feeling the tremors of their own awakening. They're starting to see what happens when someone stops apologizing for their existence, when someone stops begging for belonging and starts belonging to themselves. You've become a catalyst, a mirror showing others what it looks like to rise. You've become dangerous, but not in the way they think. Not because you're seeking revenge or dominance, but because you're proof that freedom was always possible. You've become a living contradiction to the lie that power is external. You've shown the world that the cage door was never locked. It was just heavy. Heavy with fear, guilt, and other people's expectations. Everyone else was too tired from carrying their burdens to push it open. But you did. You pushed, even when your arms trembled. And that one act of courage, that one push, created a ripple that others are now feeling. They're testing their own cages now. They're finding strength in their tired arms. And as more people awaken, the power structures that used to define the world, fear, control, hierarchy, are beginning to collapse. It's almost poetic, really. The same people who claimed authority are now scrambling to maintain a system that only worked because others agreed to stay small. The old order is falling apart, not through rebellion, but through revelation. You see, the power that ruled wasn't real. It was just a shared illusion, an unspoken agreement that some would lead while others followed. It was collective make-believe. Everyone played their parts, the dominant, the submissive, the silent, the invisible. It was theater masquerading as truth. But you stepped off the stage mid-performance. You stopped reading the script. You broke character. And when you did, the entire production began to unravel. Now they're scrambling. They're rewriting scripts, revising roles, and trying to maintain an order that never truly existed. They're panicking because your departure from their play exposed the emptiness of their authority. You showed them the line they enforced was imaginary. You showed them that comfort built on suppression is just decay in disguise. And when faced with a choice between comfort and truth, you chose truth. You always will. And now you've become the story. They're telling tales about you in whispers and secret conversations. You've become a myth, a symbol, a rumor that spreads like wildfire. They talk about you in group chats and dimly lit rooms trying to decode your evolution. Did you hear what they're doing now? They ask. They've changed. But they say it with a mix of fear, fascination, and envy. Because what they really mean is, you've become what they never had the courage to be. They can't face you directly. Your presence forces them to confront their own reflection. So they talk in circles, spinning narratives to make sense of what they don't understand. But deep down, they know the truth. You are the proof that the old order was a lie. You are living evidence that freedom was always possible. And here's the irony. They think they're warning others about you. They don't realize they're spreading your legend. Every whisper, every cautionary tale, every rumor adds to your mythology. You've become an archetype, the one who broke the rules and revealed they were never real. The one who reclaimed their crown not through conquest but through remembrance. You didn't just change the game, you ended it. You walked off the board, flipped the table, and burned the script. And now, the world is left staring at the ashes, wondering how someone they once underestimated became the blueprint for liberation. They don't know it yet, but the story they're telling about you is already reshaping the world. Because what you represent is bigger than just you. You are the symbol of awakening, the living reminder that no system, no person, no belief can contain a soul that remembers its power. You are the quiet revolution, the proof that all it takes is one person daring to remember who they are to make the entire illusion crumble. And now, every room you enter feels different. Every silence carries weight. Every step echoes louder than words. You are no longer playing by their rules because you finally realized you were never meant to play at all. You were meant to reign. You've become the cautionary tale they whisper about. Though they can't decide if the moral is to fear you or to become you. Remember when they used to be so quiet? Has turned into the opening line of a legend. They're obsessed with pinpointing the exact moment you changed, like identifying it might help them stop it from happening to others, or worse, to themselves. Because deep down they know they've been playing small too. They know they've been accepting less than they deserve, and watching you break free is forcing them to confront their own chains. Some are busy rewriting history, pretending they always believed in you. I always knew they had it in them, they say now, conveniently forgetting how they treated you when you were easy to dismiss. It's almost adorable watching them scramble to align themselves with your power now that it's undeniable. But you see through it all, the fear behind the flattery, the calculation behind the compliments, the desperate attempt to manage what they can no longer control. And you just smile because manipulation only works on those who don't know their own worth. And you? You've memorized your worth like a prayer. What's beautiful is how the entire environment around you has had to evolve. It's natural selection in real time. The ones who depended on your smallness for their comfort are going extinct in your presence. But those who can match your energy are thriving. They're grateful, they're alive, they're finally meeting the real you. And they're realizing what they've been missing all along. Your relationships have become real. Your conversations are deeper. Your connections are stronger because you've stopped performing. You've stopped curating yourself for acceptance. You're just being messy, magnetic, and authentically powerful. And the people who can handle that are rare, precious, and worth keeping. The professional spaces that once ignored you are now building tables just to have you seated at them. The social circles that once excluded you are now wondering why you're not returning their calls. The opportunities that used to pass you by are now chasing after you, not because you're playing hard to get, but because you become genuinely hard to reach. There's a difference, and everyone can feel it. Your standards have become the filter only the worthy can pass through. Your boundaries are the walls only the respectful can climb. Your energy is the currency that only those who bring equal value can afford. And the most beautiful part? You're not trying to be exclusive. You're just being wise. You're simply protecting your peace like the sacred resource it's always been. That's all for today. Dear Father, I pray for the growth of my faith. Help me trust you even when physical evidence is lacking. Let me believe in your perpetual presence, knowing you will never harm me. I understand that your thoughts for me are thoughts of prosperity and not harm to give me a good future. Thank you, gracious and eternal Father, for always listening to my voice. I offer up this prayer to you in the name of Jesus. Amen. Thank you, Jesus, for your love and provision. I am grateful for your presence in my life and the abundance you bring. If this video resonated with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who need to hear this message. Leave a comment below about your journey and how you are preparing for your own triumphant return. If you'd like to support our work, please consider contributing through Buy Me a Coffee. This helps us continually improve our content to offer you the best. The link to Buy Me a Coffee is in the description. No gift is too small. Whether it's a penny, a prayer, or a share, your generosity helps spread God's word and brings hope to others. Don't stop here. Watch our next video for powerful revelations about the signs that reveal you are the chosen one. We've enjoyed following this spiritual journey with you. Thank you for staying with us until the end. Keep shining brightly and embrace your destiny with courage. See you next time. Blessings to all the beautiful souls from the Enlighten Wisdom.